Welcome to Iconic Conversations, a podcast of inspiring stories and colorful conversations that reflect God's kingdom. I'm your host, TJ Pancake.
And I'm Dave Lee.
And we are super excited to be having this conversation today. This is a space where we're going to continue to just dig deeper into what God is teaching us as a church and to things that God is doing. And a few weeks ago, we had a sermon on generosity, and we've got another one coming up as we kind of enter into this season of the year where a lot of people are thinking about being generous and thinking about gratitude with Thanksgiving. And so we just want to talk about it. So Dave, I'd love to just kind of open with kind of a simple question, but why do you think money and generosity is so important to talk about?
Yeah, I think generosity, many of us think about churches asking for money so they can go buy stuff, right? When a church brings up generosity. Yeah. And there is that in terms of scripture that we see Paul, for example, 2 Corinthians talking about it, right? Or there's other passages where he is fundraising. But really, generosity and giving, I believe, is a overflow of God's grace and the grace that we have received. And it's a spiritual gift. It's an act of love. And there's something like, I found that the most generous people that I know are usually not people that are like they're some of the most pleasant people to be around.
Yeah.
Because they're not just generous financially, but they're generous of heart, of spirit. I think there's a spiritual element to generosity that's good for our souls. That goes beyond just the finance itself. And so for me, I want to have that broader conversation, right? There was one line that I heard recently. Basically, it's like either like generosity is and anxiety are just two opposite sides of the same coin, right? Where one, you're meditating on all the things that you don't have, right? And therefore you never have enough with anxiety, right? And then versus like generosity is you're meditating on the things God has given you. And now you're able to like freely give to other people, And so I think it's really choosing to be generous, to practice generosity that rather than go towards anxiety. And that's good for us, So anyways,
Yeah, that's good. I think even in conversations that we've had, and maybe even in your sermon on it, you've talked about like the abundance versus scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of that same idea as like, are we focused on what we don't have, or are we focused on all of the gifts that God has given us?
Mm-hmm.
And then that leads to a heart of generosity. So, I feel like it's a hard conversation to have because people get anxious about money and about feeling like people are asking for money. But I do think that it's important. And I think something you just said is so true, is that generosity is good for us. Can you tell me more about why you think that?
Yeah, I think generosity, when we are generous, we are also inviting God into our lives, into our conversation, right? So the abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset. Let me take it in this way. Last year, Icon did a Love Forward initiative, and financially, I was like, is this, it was like the whole Thanksgiving season, right? And we know as church leaders, usually November and December are the most generous months where we have the most gifts coming in, for any nonprofit organization. And so for me, it was like, okay, am I going to take those months and use it because Icon doesn't have enough and we need to survive here? Or are we going to trust that God will provide for us, and instead use the energy of that season to be a pipe, to be a conduit of generosity towards others, right? And so that's a choice we kind of have to mentally make in that, right? And the question is, will God show up? Will he provide, right? If with anxiety, we are just going I got to figure this out. And I only have this much money. These are my limitations. Versus generosity is, God, would you show up? Would you provide? And one of the things that I learned is you can never outgive God, right? But even this last year, what happened was, as a result of the Love Forward initiative, we raised a total of $3,000, right? So our church matched, and our people raised, our church matched, so it was total $3,000. So we gave to mission partners and other people in need $3,000, right? And at the end of the year, we were doing our budget for what came in and where are we, like that. We had the biggest gifts basically that we received all year, and it was almost $30,000.
Wow.
So it was like 10% like that we gave of the total that came in, and we didn't know that. That's never happened. It wasn't like that was normal, right? And I just felt like God was taking that example and just going like, Dave, you can never outgive me, right? Like, and so it really is when we choose to be generous, we are also inviting God into our circumstances, into our finances, into our situation, and trusting, man, he has everything. You know, what does he have? What does he not have? Right? Like that, like he will provide, and you can never outgive God.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that's why it's important for us to like practice generosity as a spiritual discipline. Because I mean, I guess I'll speak for myself. I never want to do that, right? Like it's like it's a hard thing to give up control and to give up trust in that kind of way, because we do, you know, like I love that story and how we can never outgive God, but it doesn't always come back financially.
No,
right? It's like, you know, sometimes I do, and I am like, and it does make my life harder. I do have to sacrifice. You think of like the widow who gave her last 2 pennies.
Yeah.
And so like being sacrificially generous in that way is hard, but we trust that God will give back to us in some kind of way, whether it's just some kind of
He will provide.
Yeah.
Right. Even if it's not like everything that we would desire.
Right.
And it's really saying like, I am not the owner of these resources. It's God.
Yeah.
Right. We're simply stewards. And again, I think it's a spiritual formation issue.
Yeah.
Primarily in terms of the question about giving and generosity, more than it is just a financial issue.
Right.
Right. I think it is really about what happens to our heart. All of that.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like really easy to just get kind of like comfortable and settled and secure and easy, I think, to fall into like traps of greed, right? Even in ways that might not necessarily look like that. Like I think a lot about like the ways in which, as I have gotten older and I've had a family, just like our life has expanded, right? So I just like I have more stuff, and like we had one house, and then we had more kids, and then we got a bigger house, and it's just like it's easy for that to just kind of continue to expand and not pay attention to it. And it's not necessarily wrong to have more stuff or to have a bigger house, if you know. But to not know and not pay attention and just let that stuff form us and shape us. Yeah. Generosity is a way for me to say like, that's not the most important thing to me. That I'm willing to continue to give and to sacrifice for the sake of God and the gospel. So
and out of love for others.
Right.
I think the conversation also around generosity is a prioritization of also modesty. Right. Of like, if you are like, man, my house needs to look like MTV Cribs. I'm not even sure if MTV Cribs is around anymore. This might be showing my age. But like, if you have to like, live this like really luxurious lifestyle, then you're never going to have enough. And it doesn't, like, again, this doesn't have to do anything with church necessarily. Like it's amazing how many like really, really people that make a lot of money are actually really poor or in debt. You know what I mean? Because you can never have enough. Versus like, if you pursue modesty and simplicity in your life, like generosity, like allows you to think, okay, if I'm modest and if I'm simple, then I can actually save, and not only save, but I can actually give. So I think it actually it's good for your soul. It kind of like purifies your soul of the endless wanting of more things and accumulation, and also a commitment to modesty. And I think the preachers who are on the media for like these terrible stories of prosperity gospel kind of thing, or it's like those guys have asked for God's people for God's resources, but they've used it for their personal greed instead of being models of modesty, right, for their congregation. Versus like, I mean, like Paul, it's like he can live in want and need. He's learned contentment. He calls us to pursue modesty, I believe, and so I think those are all things, again, of the heart, more than it is just about money, because money is a tool that goes towards whatever we love, right? And it's not about the money in and of itself.
Right. Yeah. I think contentment is such a key thing in that, because a lot of times, I think about like when I was a kid and we would get the like catalogs for Christmas, right? And you like go through and it's like, I didn't even know that thing existed 2 minutes ago, but now I need it. Right?
We're just big babies that have more bigger tools.
I know, exactly.
Or bigger toys.
Now Amazon sends us those in the mail, and I try to throw it away before my kids see it.
Yeah.
And so it's just like this drive to want more and more. But if we can be content in who God is and what He's given us, then that like frees us up, I think, to be generous. And I think it almost works like a cycle, because it's like, as we're more generous, then we're more content, because we see like, I don't actually need this stuff. Right?
Yeah.
I don't actually need all that. So
we're also saying, God, you are enough.
Right.
Like you are sufficient. Yeah. Right. It's not God plus all these other things, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's like God is my source of it. And so again, I think, that's why Paul talks about generosity as an overflow of God's grace. It's like when you have internalized how much grace God has given you, generosity overflows, right? And I think that's the right framework before obligation or duty or this is the right thing to do, is like gratitude that comes from God's grace towards us, like our heart posture being right. I think that's the more important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everything else, whether if you don't have finances and money, like that's okay. In this season, like that's okay. But how can you be generous with serving, caring, and loving, even just praying for people?
Yeah.
I think like that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I want to dig into that a little more. So like maybe more practically for people who are like, I am grateful to God. I do want to be generous, but I'm not like really sure like what that looks like, or that feels hard or impossible.
Yeah.
Like what are some steps that you would encourage people to take to become more generous?
Yeah, I think, like, let's start with time, right? So is there a way that you can allocate time just every day, even if it's like 10, 15 minutes over your lunch break, where you can say, hey, I'm not going to make this time about me. I'm going to make it about loving others, right? Because God's already been generous with me. I'm going to take this time and I'm going to give it towards others. So it could be like praying for them, texting them, asking, like, hey, I'm thinking about you. What can I pray for? But taking 15 minutes every day and just let them respond and just pray for it when, but it gets you out of that mindset of, I don't have enough, like I need this more time to myself, and all the anxiety of time management, right? And all the worry of the day, snaps you out of that, because it makes you think about the needs of others, right? Ahead of yourself, which is biblical, right? So I think even just like little things like that, or taking just the time you're driving home stuck in traffic and going like, how can I call somebody, during this drive? Make sure it's on Bluetooth, right? But like, how can you call during this drive and just go like, hey man, how are you doing? How can I be praying? How can I care for you? I think those are some simple things, that we can do that doesn't cost us any money to do, but that can be huge, for someone else. So
that's good. Yeah. I feel like too, like similarly, the ideas of like hospitality and generosity are kind of connected. And so like, there's a way to just like invite people into stuff that you're like already doing, like I'm already having dinner. I can just invite someone over and like maybe make a little bit extra, but that's not a huge sacrifice, but it's a way to be generous to someone else. So I think that things like that can be really good and helpful.
Yeah. Just want to shout out our church members, because like our church family last Saturday came over to our house, and there was this thing called nesting party, which I had never heard before.
I'd never heard.
This is my fourth kid, by the way. Where was nesting party for the first three? Like just the concept never existed. So, but they threw a nesting party for us, right? And let me tell you, my house was not for me. My house was messy. My heart, I was like, what if they see all of this mess and go like, man, Pastor Dave is a secret hoarder. We need to get out of here, kind of thing, right? So it was like, but they took a Saturday. They didn't have to, but we had like, I don't know, like 15 to 20 people come over at least. And just like help us with fixing the fence, with cleaning baseboards, with cleaning the kitchen, like there's all sorts of things. Man, we felt such an overwhelming sense of love from people. But then it was like, in all of that, it was like at the same time, I'm feeling nervous about people seeing the mess. Yeah. But then in the place where I'm actually fearful, their love and their acts of service and their generosity pushes back that fear. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it anchors me in this community. And so, man, I think like we don't know what acts of generosity like that, how that could actually change someone's heart. Yeah. Like from fear to feeling secure and loved, but it's like that little moment, that little act of kindness can make all the difference. Yeah. So
yeah, it's interesting that you kind of bring up the other side of generosity, the receiving side of it. Cause I think that can be hard too, right? Cause it's like we have this sense of like fear or shame or pride or whatever. But I know that like for me, I've done some fundraising for ministry. I know you've done some fundraising for ministry, and it is such a blessing to receive generosity from people. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the money, right? Yeah. It's just like, it's like love. It is tangible love. Yeah. And so I just feel
we get to the things we love.
Right.
Yeah. Or people we love.
Yeah. And so it's just such a great opportunity to receive that, and then to like pass that on to others as we can be generous in the way that we love.
Yeah. Let me give an example of when I was not a pastor.
Yeah. Okay.
Of generosity, of receiving generosity. So I used to be church hurt all day. Like I was super anti-church. And I saw all you church people, all you church leaders, pastors especially, are the worst. Y'all are hypocrites, waiting to be exposed. Like that was my mindset. Yeah. And then my wife and I, we just had Gabriel. We didn't really have, I just wasn't really trusting of church communities. And maybe some of y'all could relate to that, right? Yeah. And so when we had Gabriel, we didn't have any family, any support. I was a first-time dad. It's my 13-year-old son. I was the first time dad. I had no idea what I was doing. And there was this old Taiwanese lady around 90, 95, somewhere around there, years old. I forgot exactly how old. But she barely spoke any English. And it wasn't money, but she was so generous. Like she came in after we had the baby, like the moms and the dad, like we're all like kind of staying home, but I had no idea what I was doing. She would come in and bring soup or cook food every single day. Come over to our little, northeastern row home, and just like cook every single day. And over time, as she was cooking for us and taking care of us without asking anything in return, her generosity healed me of my church hurt.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. Where I started to not only see I started to not point at everybody else's hypocrisy, but I started to look at my own hypocrisy of saying like, I'm a Christian. And I say I'm a Christian. Jesus says to love one another like Christ. She's doing that for me, but am I willing to do that for her? Right.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to generosity, man. That's a spiritual gift.
Yeah.
Right. And it brought about healing in me. And all these years later, like now I'm a pastor, right? And I've also been called to generosity, right? I've also been called to do the same thing as she did, someone else who's hurting. So I would just say, like, you never know. And that had nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
It's just a generous spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And, think about the impact that had, at least for me and also for our church. Like we wouldn't have been here.
Yeah.
If God hadn't used her to heal my heart back then.
Yeah. That's so awesome. And that just makes me think of like what the church could be and what the world could be like if the church really stepped into that. So, I mean, I guess maybe just even along those lines, like if we could dream as maybe Icon Church particularly, or just the church as a whole, if we grew in that kind of generous spirit, like just how do you think things would be different? How would that impact our communities and our world?
Yeah. I think individually think about the impact, right? Yeah. Every neighborhood and space and like volunteering or giving. If you think about within the church of like, as people have need, like Acts 2, 42 to 47, it's not a statement on socialism, by the
Right,
way.
yeah.
It's about mutual love and care for one another, right? And sacrificial care for one another. That when everyone loves like that, and everyone's blessed, right?
Yeah, I had a conversation the other day, and we were talking about that, and the guy that I was talking to was like, "Man, does like anybody actually do this? Like,
Yeah.
like sell all of their possessions and give them to the poor?"
Yeah.
And just like that idea of like that radical kind of generosity. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
No, absolutely. And I think there's some people who have that extra like
yeah,
gifting of generosity
Yeah.
that God's like really called them to do that
Yeah.
more specific. All of us are called to exercise it.
Right.
Some people are really gifted in it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So I do think that. Now, in terms of churches, I'm like, man, churches are not meant to be. I think the confusion that some people have is churches are not meant to be places where we are hoarding all of these resources.
Yeah.
Like God, just as a individual has or a Christian has been called to steward those gifts, the church has been also called to steward. As just like the individual has been called to be generous, the church has also been called to generosity, right? So whether it be like sending out church plants and making sure there's new or missionary work efforts that are being done, we see that in the Bible. Like Paul, like read it up for yourself, but Paul talks about like bring your gifts to the church, let the church then also reallocate that, right?
Mhm.
So we're pipe, not a pool. We're not holding any of this stuff, even like building. So like
Mhm.
for those of us, we don't have it, but like
Mhm.
for other churches that have buildings, it's like how can you think of the church building
Yeah.
as a conduit of generosity,
Right.
rather than just this is my castle or my space or my whatever, or just a Sunday worship gathering? How can the church be generous with the space to make a difference
Mhm.
in impacting other people, right? I think even all those things, it's just we need to rethink
Yeah.
what we think is normal.
Yeah.
So much of our understanding as churches has also been shaped by the suburban culture of this is like my own little area, right? My safe space.
Mhm.
It's not called to just be that,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're called to share with everyone.
Yeah.
And to be that, that Jesus talks about being a city on a hill. And
Yeah.
I think that generosity is one way that we can do that we can be a light in a dark world, that people can look to the church and say like, I actually want to be a part of that because I've experienced the love and the joy that comes from like all of these people's generous spirits.
That's right.
And I just think it's different when it's like, and it's cool if that's one person and it's cool if that's an institution, but it's, I think the gospel, if that's a community of people all doing that together.
Mhm.
And that's really exciting. And I want to be a part of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Dave, anything else that you want to share about generosity? Any encouragement you would have to people listening or watching?
Yeah, I'm just, ask the Lord, like trust him with your with the finances, with the things you feel anxious about. But like I just ask the Lord of like, how can I be generous in one way and to someone?
Yeah.
Or, how can I be a blessing? And just the simplest of ways,
Mhm.
just be faithful to that, and if it's giving to, meet someone else's need, an individual, do that. If it's time,
Mhm.
do that. If it's mentoring at your kid's school,
Yeah.
there's so many ways to be generous,
Yeah.
but I just want to invite people to trust the Lord with that
Mhm.
and take one step of obedience and see how he provides.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good. And maybe even just start with a prayer. Like,
Yeah.
God, will you give me an opportunity to be generous
Mhm.
today?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you all for listening to Iconic Conversations. We hope that it was a blessing to you, and we'll see you soon.